Good afternoon, gamers. With the release of Boulderscape 3 hitting the PS5 this week and just been out on PC for the past 2 weeks, it's already shaping up to be the greatest game of all time according to reviews. Now, the game is fantastic, I can't wait to play it on my Xbox, but for those of us who don't have multi-platforms, I thought I would create this list of 8 games on the Switch that can scratch that Boulderscape 3 itch. Let's dive right in. Starting right off, let's get the low-hanging fruit out of the way with Boulderscape Enhanced Edition, which is available on the Switch. It's also a part of the Dungeons & Dragons bundle, which is currently on sale as well. Now, Boulderscape Enhanced Edition is an isometric RPG. It features a fantastic storyline and Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition rules. The game is really incredible, but be warned, it has aged, so it does feature some old-school gameplay mechanics that don't really gel well with today, although they've done a great job in making the modern adjustments to the console versions. So it's still not too bad, but for those of you who are looking to get into this sort of genre and never had played it before, I probably wouldn't recommend starting with the original, which sounds a bit hypocritical, but unfortunately it has aged. Second is Boulderscape 2 Enhanced Edition, and I know, yes, what an easy one to think about. Now, this is also an isometric game as well. It's not 3D like Boulderscape 3, but it is another fantastic game with plenty of story, plenty of action, plenty of options to do things. It's a really great game. Unfortunately, it has aged as well, so for those looking to dive in to the genre, like I said, probably don't start with that, but there is one on the list out of this crop that is a great starting point. And that is Neverwinter Nights. So Neverwinter Nights is the first 3D foray in this series of the Boulderscape adventures. Neverwinter Nights is actually one of BioWare's first 3D RPG games, and it is fantastic. Now, it does have all the modern adjustments with the Enhanced Edition as well, and it's well worth your time. Icewind Dale, which is also a part of this Dungeons & Dragons bundle, is more focused on combat instead of story. There's still a great story involved there as well, but there's a lot more action as well. So if you're looking for something that's a bit lighter on dialogue and a bit more heavy on action, then Icewind Dale is a fantastic one to start with. It's also the isometric 2D version as well, which might turn some new gamers off, but it's definitely worth an adventure. Now, the last one out of this particular D&D bundle, and when I say the D&D bundle, like I said, it is in a huge bundle on the eShop, and it's currently on sale at the moment, is Planescape Torment. Now, Planescape Torment was my first entry into the Dungeons & Dragons sort of games. It was a game set across a couple of dozen screens, and now while that seems very limited, it's the story. The story. This game follows the Nameless One as you try to uncover your identity and the mysteries within the world of the Forgotten Realms. I highly recommend it. It is still that 2D isometric, but if you're going to start with one of the 2D ones, Planescape Torment is where it's at. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite all-time games. Now, moving on to some games that aren't in the D&D bundle, let's take a look at For the King. Now, For the King, don't be fooled by the graphics. For the King is a roguelite D&D adventure where everything is determined by a dice roll. Every time you complete missions or adventures, you will unlock events and encounters which will then appear in your next game. The game is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I've managed to beat it once and then unlock a whole bunch of things, and I haven't been able to beat it again. I really enjoy For the King. I highly recommend it. It's always on sale as well and well worth the asking price. Onto a more serious entry, we have Disco Elysium, The Final Cut. Now, I actually missed out on this game when it first launched because I thought it was going to be some kind of silly 70s game. It turns out it's set in a bleak and distant future, and it follows the internal psyche of a detective as he follows a path of self-destructive alcoholism. Now, it does sound pretty heavy and full on. It is definitely a game for the adults only. It's well earned its R18 rating, but for those who do try it, you'll be sucked into an incredible story and exploration of the human psyche. Well recommended. And finally, the game that will be the closest to Boulderscape 3 on the Switch is Divinity 2 Original Sin. It is also developed by the Boulderscape 3 developers, Larian Studios, and it is an absolutely incredible game. Now, it tells a story by both your character's dialogue, but also switching seamlessly to a narrator who's explaining what's going on. The game is incredible. I think I'm 100 hours in and I'm nowhere near the end. You can do all sorts of crazy things with the environment. It's got such clever environment design. You can use telekinesis to drop oil barrels and set them on fire, which makes enemies go down different paths. You can combine spells with your teammates to then create different traps and different unique approaches to battle. It's absolutely incredible the amount of freedom that you have in this game, and the adventure in the story is also just next level. I highly recommend it. So unfortunately, we don't get Baldur's Gate 3, but the next best thing is Divinity 2 Original Sin. If you haven't already got it and you're looking to get into a Baldur's Gate 3 type game, Divinity 2 is where it's at. I highly recommend it. So there you have it. Now, I may have missed some games because I originally did have 10 games, but 2 of them, it turns out, were action RPGs. So I tried to stick more to Dungeons and Dragons sort of games. So if I've missed anything, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd also love to try some new D&D type games. See you next time, gamers.